Is my modification roadmap for this Tele on the right track? And is it based in reality? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Welcome, and welcome back to Project Isaac, where my motto is to keep it real. For those of you that may not have seen the previous videos, just a real quick recap before we move on. I'm modifying this guitar. This happens to be a Fender Squire Affinity Telecaster. Hopefully, maybe some of you can even tell that this is what this guitar is. I'm going to be modifying this guitar. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any experience doing this. But I'm going to give it a try. Now, occasionally, I might sound like I know what I'm talking about, but that is only because of all the research and similar videos I personally even have watched on this topic. So don't be fooled. Also, I'm not a great player, although I'm going to have to play a little bit so people can understand the tone. We'll talk about that later. This video today is all about elaborating in detail all the modification opportunities that I see and that I plan to do. But I'm struggling to keep this video at a reasonable length. I don't want to bore people with a half-hour long video. So today I'm just going to focus strictly on the mods, including the parts and materials, and I'm going to defer the baseline tone test and the other tone test I plan to do to the next video. So we won't get into that today. I want to express my goals in a little bit more granularity now, because I'm trying, at least within reason, to go all out on this guitar, modifying this guitar and upgrading this guitar, even at the expense of a lot of expense. Because I'm doing this for the experience and the fun mainly, and so I don't want to leave a stone unturned. Now, there's three aspects that I have in mind as I do modify this guitar, and they're no different than anybody else's, I'm sure. But first is aesthetics, and by the way, these are not in order, but one is aesthetics, another is playability, and the other is tone. And I don't think there's any shock there. Now, obviously, there's a lot of overlap between those three elements. That goes without saying, so I recognize that. Now, I want to break this also down into 6 phases that I have in mind. And bear with me, I'm a project manager by training, so I just can't help it. So phase 1, I'm going to be dealing with the neck and the fretboard here. And we'll talk about that. That's primarily going to be playability kind of stuff. Phase 2, the tuning machines, the nut, the bridge, the saddles, that sort of thing, kind of hardware-ish things. Number 3, the aesthetics, strap lock, changing the pick guard, string guide, that kind of stuff. Phase 4 are going to be all about the electronics, basically a new harness, electronics down here with the controls. And 5, or phase 5, will be the pickups. And phase 6, I call it the niceties, for lack of a better term, a strap, a case, clean and polish, all that kind of good stuff. Now, I do have a little mini family get-together coming up in June in California. So I'm hopeful to get all this done by then, because I would really like to show it off to the family by then. So we'll see if I can make that. Anyway, otherwise, I hope this is in some reasonable order, some reasonable logical order. Now, I do reserve the right to move these phases around a little bit, because there's many different ways to think what order these should be in. And I've chosen this order for now, but I may change my mind as I go through. Please let me know if you would have a different approach in terms of the order of work based on your experience and your opinions in the comments section below. A couple of the upgrades I'm not going to be doing personally. It has to do with a new electric harness down in here and has to do with the pickups. Soldering's involved, and this is just above my capability and my knowledge. But I do have a local luthier here in town, Sean, who works at Grey Dog or Chris Fleming Guitars. Some of you may recognize the name Chris Fleming. Chris worked for Fender for a number of years. After hearing everything I'm going to do today, by the way, if you have any better ideas or opinions, again, drop them in the comments. I'd be happy to read those and entertain those. Color scheme-wise, just a quick note, I'm going to be staying with chrome and black. That's going to be the basic color scheme. All right, let's talk about phase one, the neck and the fretboard. Speaking about the fretboard, I do want to mention that after the last video, when I took a closer look at the guitar, I noticed that the strings and the fretboard are off kilter and off center here. In other words, the high E string is practically falling off the fretboard, and the low E string is well off the fretboard, off the edge of the fretboard. So I'll be dealing with that and fixing that. I have an idea about how to do that as we go along. I'll cross that road when it's time to cross that road. Okay, fretboard and neck. What are my plans here? I should say, first of all, this is the scariest phase, and it happens to be phase one of all phases, but this is the scariest phase because much of the work I'm going to be doing here, if I make mistakes along the way, there's kind of no going back. And so I'm going to be taking it very slow and easy and trying not to make that kind of mistake where it's going to ruin something here and then I'm dead in the water. But let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do is roll the fretboard or the fingerboard here. Now, how do I plan on doing it? Well, I'm first going to start by beveling the frets with this tool here I got from Music Nomad. This is a fret beveling file, and so I'm going to start with this and see if I can't start the process that way. And I think maybe some of you may recognize this. And then what I'm going to do, and I got this idea off of someone on YouTube, is to use drywall sandpaper, for lack of a better term. Now these come in various grits here, as you can see, and you would obviously be careful and start with, I'll probably start with the highest grade grit so I don't ruin it. But after the beveling, then I'll go through and try to roll the fingerboard with this drywall sandpaper. Then I think the next thing I would probably want to do is crown the frets. I've mentioned before these frets are very rough. They're very dull. And so I'm going to be using this tool that I got from Fret Guru. This is obviously a crowning fret file. And so I'm going to give my try at this and hopefully I don't ruin the frets. And then after that, I figure it's going to be time to do the frets, fix the fret sprouting, because I mentioned the fret. Now, what I don't know is if once I do the beveling and the sanding to get the edge of the fretboard nice, if that's going to be taking care of the fret sprout or not. I'm going to assume not for now, and therefore I have this fret sprouting file, for lack of a better term. I guess you call it a fret file. And I got this from Fret Guru as well. And so we'll see how that goes. Then after that, I'm going to want to polish the frets. And I'm going to do that. Again, I got these ideas from someone off of YouTube. And I'm going to use, first of all, a what they call a micro polishing paper. And that's what this looks like. So I'll start with that and then finish it off with what they call Miracle All-Purpose Polishing Cloth. And that's what this looks like. So there you go. So I'm going to give those, hopefully that shines those all up, smooths them all up, and they're really nice to go. And then the last thing I'm going to do is the back of the neck. Now, I mentioned before with the back of the neck, if it's finished, it's so lightly finished, it's almost imperceptible. So I do want some kind of a satin finish on it that makes the playability and the aesthetics a little nicer. So what I think I'm going to be doing, and again, this is based on things I found out on YouTube, probably want to do some really, really light sanding just to rough it up a little bit and smooth it out a little bit. And then, and maybe open up the pores a little bit, I'm thinking. And then what I heard is a great way to get a nice smooth satin finish is use Danish oil. So I have this Danish oil here, Furniture Clinic Danish oil. So that's what I'm going to be using for the back of the fretboard, and we'll see how that goes. Obviously, at this point, when I'm done with all this, there's not going to be any need for a tone test. Okay, let's move on to phase two. That has to do with the tuning machines, the nut, the hardware down here, the bridge, and the saddles here. As far as the tuning machines are concerned, I'm going to swap those out. I bought myself from Fender locking tuners. as you can see here. So I'm going to give those a try, swap those out, and it should be a big improvement. And then as far as the nut's concerned, I got myself here a tusk nut. Now this is a plastic nut, and so definitely I want to improve that situation. So I have myself here a black tusk nut. So hopefully you can see that there. It says here, sorry I need this because my eyesight's so bad, but it says here this is designed to boost harmonics, keep the guitar in tune longer than graphite, bone, plastic, or synthetic nuts. To me, I thought plastic and synthetic nuts were basically the same thing. The major cause of tuning frustration is when the strings bind at the nut. This is precision engineered with PTFE, whatever that means. Well, I see what it means. It means it's the slipperiest substance on earth. Okay, that's interesting. This is going to reduce friction, increase tuning stability, and permanently lubricated throughout so you can play aggressively. Now, I'm not an aggressive player, so it's probably overkill for me. Use tremolo and do massive string bends with confidence. String bends with confidence. Now, I do bend my strings, but I don't do it massively, so again, may not apply to me. But anyway, this is what I have in mind, so hopefully that'll improve the tone to some extent. And now finally, I have in mind changing the bridge saddles. I'm going to leave the bridge as is, the rest of the hardware, but I am going to change the saddles. So I'm going to change the saddles to what, from a company called Graphtec. I'm sure many of you have heard Graphtec. I have high performance saddles here that dramatically reduce string breakage. You'll see this. I guess it's from Canada, from I can understand. So let me let you get a quick look at that. Let's see what they say here. So they say this string savers are engineered again with PTFE. That seems to be a very popular substance. The slipperiest substance on earth. Whew. Now we just heard that about the nut as well. Reduce string friction at saddles and virtually eliminate string breakage. String breakage. Now, I've never broken a string in all the time I've been playing, so again, maybe not such a big thing for me. As a string vibrates against the saddle, metal grips too firmly, bending the strings until they break. String saver saddles ease the grip, microscopically spreading the stress over a greater area, allowing the strings to glide back into place. So that gives you an idea what I have in mind for phase 2. I will be doing a tone test after phase 2 here because hopefully one or more of these elements are going to improve the tone a little bit. Whether it's going to be perceptible to me or not, that could be another question, but we'll give it a go. Okay, phase 3. I call this phase aesthetics again, but there's a little overlap maybe with playability. You could probably argue as you may see. So first up are strap locks. I have these Fender strap locks. They're called Affinity locks. Now, I don't play on stage with a strap, so this is not going to be really that big of a deal to me in terms of its quality per se. But I did like the fact that they were Fender with the Fender F logo on them. This is basically for looks more than anything, for me anyway. So it does say it's designed to keep your instrument safe, even during the most strenuous stage acrobatics. Again, I'm never on stage, and I certainly don't do acrobatics at my age. Fender Infinity locks are crafted from durable steel. That sounds good. 360 degrees of rotation, along with a unique side pinch release mechanism, allows you to adjust your instrument with ease. So this will be interesting. Again, I hope these just kind of basically look good on the guitar. Next up would be a string guide. As I mentioned before, I wasn't happy with the string guide that came with the guitar. It's kind of that kind of ugly, to me it's ugly, utilitarian kind of dual string guard there. And so I got myself this one. This is more kind of it's probably hard to see, and I'm not going to worry about it too much right now, but it's kind of a round, sort of a circle string guard, and I think it's just going to look a lot better. It's also chrome, so it's going to match the guitar better than this, whatever that little tin thing is there. And finally, for aesthetics, I want to change the pick guard. This white's okay, but I think it's just too much of a contrast to me between the white and the blue. And I have black on this pickup, and I have black on this knob, and I'm going to have a black nut, so I'm going to have a black pickguard. So this is what it looks like, and I'll be installing this along the way on this phase, and so I think I'm going to be happier with the aesthetics once I have this on. Okay, moving on to phase 4. Phase 4 has to do with the electronics, the controls here and all the electronics behind the controls. Again, this is not something I'm going to do myself. I'm not going to do the installation myself. I'm going to have that done by Sean at Chris Fleming Guitars in town here. And but I will film him, or I video him, record him, whatever the right word is, so you'll get a sense of what he's doing on that when he does that. Now what I have here is a harness from a company called 920. This is recommended to me for my Sweetwater engineer. Let you take a look at this. Just nice chrome. It's very similar to what you see here, although I can say the pots certainly move much, much nicer. And here's the electronics behind it. Here's the harness behind it. Now they claim that they have boutique components that tighten up the tone. I'm not sure what that means, but that they have an ideal balance between capacitance and resistance. Again, not really quite sure what that means. And that they have 250K pots. Again, I'm not quite sure what that means, but it must be good. But as you can see too, it does have this orange drop capacitor, which my understanding, it's a big deal. And they claim it adds warmth and clarity. And if that's true, I'm all for that. So basically that's what we have there. Now, oh, you can see the output jack as well. Now, when I'm all done with this, or I should say when Sean's all done with this, it will be due for a tone test for sure to see if the change of the electronics, theoretically it's supposed to, improves the tone, or at least changes the tone. And again, I'm not sure my ear will be able to tell. I hope it can, but maybe for many of you it will. Phase 5. Phase 5 is all about the pickups here. Now, I'm going to change these pickups out. Actually, I shouldn't say I'm going to change them out. As I mentioned before, actually Sean, the local luthier here in town, is going to change these out for me down at Chris Fleming Guitars, because I don't want to deal with that. But I will record him doing it. Now, I settled on Alnico 2 type of single coil pickups. Now, why did I do that? Based on what I've been hearing when I listen to those types of pickups, and based on what I've read, they tend to have a more warm tone, which I like. They tend to have a more pronounced mid-range, which I like. And they tend to have what I read as a creamy sustain. Now, I know what sustain means, but I don't know what a creamy sustain is. I think that's probably a marketing term. And they have good note definition, which I hope that would be true. And that they're primarily used for people that like to play blues and rock. And those are my primary genres, not my only ones, but my primary genres. So I have here these Fender Alnico 2 vintage pickups. These are noiseless. I did play this guitar in my tube amp before I started this video here today, and sure enough, there is a lot of noise. So I'm looking forward to the noiseless pickups, Alnico 2s. And then, of course, what we'll do after this, of all changes I'm making after this, certainly going to do a tone test, because from everything I've heard and read and people I've talked to, I can expect the biggest tone improvement with these pickup changes. No shock there, right? The final phase, phase 6, is all about what I'm calling the final niceties of the guitar. I don't know what else to call it. I'm going to clean and polish the guitar. I'll condition the fretboard, which it badly needs. It's super dry here. I'll put the final set of new strings on. I mean, it's going to have some new strings off and on during the course of all the mods as I do different tone tests and such. But this will be the final time I'll do it. I'll get a strap. I haven't bought a strap for it yet. I think it's going to be one of those things I'll know it when I see it, but I do have a black or a blue one. Since that's the color scheme here in mine, we'll see what I find. And then I also want to get a very nice case for it, a very nice Fender case. Now, I don't really need a case per se. It's not like I'm running around gigging with this guitar in town, as you know. But it just still feels like that's a nice way to finalize my journey here with a nice home for it. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm going to have one final mod surprise at the end. If you stick with me through all the rest of my videos as I actually do all these modifications, the very last one will be a surprise. I haven't mentioned it in detail yet. When I get done with this phase, obviously no need for a tone test. Now, that kind of wraps up all the phases and all the ideas I have in mind for this modification of this guitar. Again, I know I said this a couple times, but if you think I'm missing anything, if you think I'm doing anything wrong, if you think you have any better ideas, I am all ears. Any constructive criticism, any constructive feedback you may have. I don't mind changing my plans if I get a better idea. By the way, just a quick high-level preview of my sound system or my sound chain that I'll be using when I do the tone test. I'll get into more details later when I actually do the tone test. I'll give you all the nitty-gritty settings that I'll be doing. But basically, it's going to be going from my Fender 65 Deluxe Reverb. Why not use a Fender? It's going to match the vendor of the guitar. So I think there's some symmetry there. I do have an attenuator. I live in a situation here there I have to keep the noise reasonable. I have a dynamic microphone, 4 amps, and the microphone goes to an audio interface I have, and then the audio interface goes to my DAW, and that's basically it. Okay, let's wrap this way too long video up today. Believe me, I tried my best to edit this down to the bare minimum. I have a thing about not boring people, so I certainly don't want to do that here. But obviously there was a lot to get through, and I wanted to get into some reasonable detail so you kind of knew what I had in mind here. Now the next video is going to establish the tone baseline. So basically the guitar as is, I'm just going to tune it up, and then I'm going to play it. Simple as that. And then the next time after that, or immediately after that, I will do a simple setup as needed. I'll check out what might need to be done there. And then string change, and then I'll do tone test number 2, and we'll get those down as kind of baseline tone test. So anyway, thank you for watching today. I hope you'll join me next time during the tone test videos. And all I can say is wish me luck. I have a lot to do, and keep it real.